A very good morning to everyone. My name is Prem Maheshwaran. I'm a product expert of ServiceDesk Plus. I welcome you all to the fourth session of this masterclass training webinar series. This broadcast is from Pleasanton in California, where our headquarters is. Today in this session, we are going to discuss about asset management and the various discovery and classification options available in ServiceDesk Plus on-premises version. So the topics for discussion today are the asset types, the different type of assets that you can manage with ServiceDesk Plus, how to deal with different makes and models of assets, various options available to remotely discover and inventory assets, managing the complete life cycle of assets, and finally we'll have a question and answer session in which we'll discuss about your queries. All right, without further ado, let us jump into the product. For this presentation, I'm using the Enterprise Edition of the on-premises version of ServiceDesk Plus. Asset management is available in the Professional Edition and the Enterprise Edition in ServiceDesk Plus. Okay, let us go to the Asset section. So in the Asset section, as soon as you go to this tab, you can see the left side pane where you have got various classification of assets. As you can see, you can manage both IT assets as well as non-IT assets. And also you can manage asset components. Let us quickly see how we can create this classification first. Now under the IT assets, I can further see a lot of other asset types. Based on the nature of the asset, you can further create broader classification like printers, routers, switches, workstations, etc. Likewise, you can also create non-IT asset classification. To do this, go to the admin section. Under the admin section, scroll down to asset management. And here you see something called product type. So product type is what creates the broader classification of an asset based on the nature of usage. Now let us create a new product type and see the different options available there. I'm going to say coffee machine. So I'd like to manage all the coffee machines in my company. Now here it lets you to choose the type of asset it is, whether it's an asset, a component which is attached to an asset, or if it is a consumable which is consumed by the assets and resources. This is an asset. Now the category, whether it falls under the IT or the non-IT category. In my case, it is going to be a non-IT asset. Once the classification is set, I can now save this as a new product type. I have successfully added a new product type, coffee machine. Let us see how it reflects under the Asset tab. Now let me go back to the Asset tab, quickly refresh this page. And under the non-IT category, now I have got a new product type called coffee machine. Now, if I go to the coffee machine section, I can add new coffee machines. So addition of non-IT asset can happen through a form. When I click on it, it lets me provide an asset name, the product that defines the model of the asset. So we saw about product type, which is a broader classification based on the nature. Now let us see how we can add the model. To do that, once again, you need to go under the admin section, choose product. So this is where you can find all the different models of both hardware and software asset. To give you a realistic IT example, let me search for latitude. So all right. Yep. These are the different latitude models of laptop that I have in my asset repository. Likewise, MacBook. So I've got two different type of MacBooks available in my organization. So the model of the asset is stored under the product. So with the product and product type, I can create the further classification, that is the model of the asset. Now let us create a new product under the product type coffee machine. So I'm going to call this Starbucks coffee maker. Now, I also get an option to calculate the depreciation of the asset once the useful life is over. And these are the four different models that we support to calculate the depreciation and the salvage value once the useful life is completed for the asset. So I'm going to provide the useful life in months, the salvage value as $50. We can save this. All right, let us go back to the assets section and quickly refresh this page. Now I get to add the coffee maker. And I can now choose the model of the coffee maker, provide the business impact, and this is where you can classify the state of the asset. The life cycle of the asset is controlled by the asset states. By default, every asset will be in store. Now you can move the asset from in store to in use. If it is under repair, you can pull it under in repair state. If you are going to lease it internally, you can choose it as loaner. If the asset is taken out of usage, it can be expired. And finally, if it is going to be thrown out of your organization, it can be set as disposed. These are the different states available to mark the life cycle of an asset. Now, the asset can also be associated to sites. If your organization is operating in a different geographical location, an asset can be bound to a site. I'm going to say Australia. And finally, the location of the asset, the physical location of the asset can also be provided. Further, the details of the asset can also be updated. The vendor who supplied the asset, the purchase cost, the acquisition date and expiry date, and all the information about the asset along with the barcode can be added. And also you can choose to calculate the depreciation, which will automatically fetch the information from the product that we have created. So we have created the product along with the depreciation method and the useful life of the asset, and also it fetches the salvage value. Once everything is populated, you can now save the asset. So a new asset is created which falls under the non-IT category. The licensing model of ServiceDesk Plus is based on the number of IT assets that you can manage. All these consume licenses. If you add anything under this category, it falls under the IT asset and it consumes a license. But for non-IT, we don't have any restrictions. Let us quickly take a look at the IT assets that we have added into the application. Let me go to workstations. And here, as soon as you get into the workstation, you can find the operating system that is quickly shown in the icon. So these are machines which are discovered and identified. It shows the operating system and the type of the asset right away. From the list view, you also get a lot of other information. You find it as a Windows workstation, the model, which is the product, the operating system that it runs, the service tag of the asset, the current state of the asset. If an asset is in use, you can also find the owner of the asset and also the department that owns the asset, even the purchase cost, and the vendor from who you procured this asset. All this information is available right away from the list view. Now let us open an asset and see the information that we have found by doing a discovery. So when you scan an asset, you find all this information. So that is the advantage of remotely scanning an asset. Now before we move further, let me quickly show you how you can remotely scan assets and bring information into ServiceDesk Plus. So that is the advantage of managing IT assets with ServiceDesk. Go to the admin section. In the left side pane under Discovery, you will find Windows Agent Configuration. ServiceDesk Plus is capable of scanning Windows, Linux, Mac, HP UX, and AIX machines. And also it can scan VMware along with all the host machines that run on the bare metal. It also creates a relationship between the bare metal server and the hosts. But to scan a Windows machine, we use an agent model. This is where you can download an agent. An agent will contain the information about the server. It contains the server name, the IP address, the port in which the application server runs. By default, the port is 8080, but it can be configured to run on 80 or 443 as per your requirements. The protocol in which the application runs, and the agent which runs on the end user's PC will listen on port 9000. So when I initiate a command to scan from the central server, the command will be issued to the end user's PC on port 9000. And this piece of software will run, collect the hardware and software information and push it back to the central server. There is also a configuration available to scan the system at boot. So whenever the machine is restarted, it will automatically run the scan and push the information back to the central server. Once that is done, you can download the agent, which is an MSI package. As you can see, it downloads. And this MSI file can be installed in all the Windows machines. There are various ways with which you can bulk install the MSA package. The most common way is to use a GPO through the Active Directory. You can download the agent, and the instructions to configure a new GPO to deploy this MSA package is available here. And there is also a startup script. So once the script is configured and the MSA package is provided as a parameter for the script, it will be automatically deployed as soon as the GPO is executed during startup. If the machines are not part of a domain, if it is part of a work group, you can also use the PSExec utility from Microsoft, provide the list of IP addresses, and then push the MSA package to all the machines available in your work group. Deployment through Windows Image is also possible. So we recommend you to use these methodologies to deploy the agent. So agent does a delta scan, which means during the first scan, it will give all the information about the hardware and software to the central server. However, during consecutive scans, it does send only the difference back to the central server. That way, it is much efficient, very faster, and also very efficient. All right, so this is how you can scan a Windows machine. So push the agent, it will be running in the end user's PC. When you initiate a scan, it will automatically fetch the hardware and software information. Now let us see how we can run an automated scan. To do that, go to the audit settings. Here is where you can enable scan schedule. Once it is enabled, you can set the frequency at which the central server has to run all the end user's PC. It can be a daily, weekly, monthly, or a periodic scan. So I'm going to do a weekly scan. And the frequency, I'm going to call it Thursdays and at 11 a.m. So every Thursday at 11 a.m., just like our webinar, this one automatically happens and it fetches the information from the end user's PC. So the scan schedule will automatically issue command to all the agents that are running on the Windows PCs. But what about non-Windows machines and network devices? For network devices and non-Windows machines, we support Agentless model of scanning. Let us quickly see credential library and its usage in the non-Windows machines. So when you initiate a scan against any device, Windows, Mac or Linux, VMware, SNMP based devices like printers, switches and routers, you may also have to provide the credentials that are required to access the machine and fetch the hardware information. So credential library stores all the credentials that are required for the scan and it is irreversibly hashed. So you don't have to worry about the security of storage of the credentials. Now when I go to add a Windows credential, I have to provide the credential name, the domain and the username and the password. If the credential is used for a workgroup machine, you can provide the workgroup name / the username. Likewise, there are various ways to add Telnet or SSH based devices, VMware credentials, SNMP v1, v2. We can provide the community string. And finally, we also support SNMP v3 for the new age devices. These are the various different options under which credentials can be stored. Now, when I set up the audit settings to automatically scan the devices, it will issue a command to the Windows agents, and for non-Windows machines, it will use the credentials, scan the machine, and then fetch the information back to the central server. For Windows machines, we know that it automatically checks the domain. Let us see where you can add the domain. So under Windows Domain Scan, this is where you can configure all the different domains that are available in your organization. You can provide the domain controller information and also any user credential with read permission on the domain controller is sufficient. So with that information, we'll read the domain controller, fetch the list of computers that are attached to the domain, and we'll initiate a scan. For network devices, a network range can be configured. Say for example, if you'd like to scan a complete subnet, you can provide the network. That way, all the devices that are available in the subnet will be scanned. And also the credentials that are required can be configured here. So if it finds any Windows machines, it will automatically scan using Agent. If it finds Linux, Mac, and Solaris machines, I can set up the credential. Likewise, for SNMP devices, I can choose the credentials that will be used. And even Cisco IP phones, if it is available in the subnet, it can be scanned. But sometimes we may have to ignore critical assets from getting disturbed via scan. It may be either because of the IT policy or for security reasons. If that is the case, there is an option to exclude certain IP addresses from the subnet getting scanned. So here you can create an exclusion list and those assets will be ignored from getting scanned. And also it is possible to configure an IP range. You can provide the start and the end addresses and also provide an exclusion list. That way, all the available machines in this network will be scanned using the credentials which is fetched from the credential library. Let us take a look about distributed asset scan. Sometimes you may have offices in remote locations that are completely not connected to your headquarters. So that is where distributed asset scan will help you. The distributed asset scan will deploy a probe in the remote office and the probe will do all the scanning for you. Once the scan is complete, the information will be stored as a zip file which can then be sent via email, or if the probe can be connected to the central server, it will automatically push that information. The scan data will be fetched in bulk via distributed asset scan for remote offices. There is also a built-in remote control tool in the agent. So if you have deployed agent on the end user's PC, now you can initiate a remote control. And with the recent version of ServiceDesk Plus, we now support web remote, which works on any type of machine. You can now initiate web remote via the browser on Mac machines as well as Windows machines as well as Linux machines. You can take advantage of that, and all the sessions that you initiate via web remote will be stored as a recording in the ticket. Now let us see how a technician can be given the privilege to to do a web remote. Any technician, including the administrator, has to be given the privilege to do remote control. To do that, go to the roles. In the roles section, you will find a system default role called AE Remote Control. Only after provisioning this role, a technician can initiate remote sessions on end user's PC. To provide this role to a technician, go to the technicians list, edit a technician, and in his profile, scroll down, you'll find the associated roles. So here, AE Remote Control role has to be associated. And once that is done and saved, this technician will then have the privilege to initiate remote sessions. So that is how remote control can be given to a technician. And in addition to the agent as well as web remote, you also got options to configure third-party tools like VNC, Dameware, etc. Now let us go to a scanned asset and see the other options available here. Once the asset is scanned and once the information is brought into ServiceDesk Plus, in the CI info, the basic page, you'll find all the information, the basic information about the asset. And you can see that there is even a barcode available. Now, let us go to the hardware section. So in the hardware section, it shows the computer system information, the operating system information, the processor and processor type, the memory modules available, network adapters and its status, and even the logical drive. This information will come in handy when a technician is working on an incident created against this asset. For example, if a performance issue is reported against this asset, information such as the memory available in the asset will come in handy to the technician who works on a ticket. Let us see how you can associate an asset to a ticket. To do that, first of all, let us see how you can associate this asset to a user. To associate this asset to a user, click on Assign, choose the user or a department. Sometimes assets will be owned by department. For example, financial servers will be owned by the finance department. It will not be assigned to a user, but it's consumed by an entire department. In that case, you can assign the asset to a department or even to a site. I'm going to associate this asset to a user. Let me quickly pick a user. So I'm going to say it's Paul Trent. His site is London and he belongs to the sales department in London. Once I save, the state of the asset changes to in use. Now, if this user reports an incident, the asset will be automatically available in the ticket. Let us see how it works. I'm going to go to the request section, request catalog. I'm going to say new incident. All right, in my case, Paul Trent is the user. So as soon as I choose the requester, you can find the asset is associated in the ticket. And once the incident is submitted, all right, I've got a few mandatory fields. Let me fill it quickly. Now I have created a new incident. When I scroll down to the request details, I can find the asset against which the incident is reported. Now if I click on this option, I can straight away go to the asset details section where I can find the hardware and software information. Information such as this will come in handy when you work on incidents and service requests. So this is how we can connect or align IT service management to IT asset management. All right, let us go back to the asset section. Go to the asset. Now, in the assets page, you'll find requests as one of the tabs. So this will show all the pending tickets that are associated to this asset, and also even the closed tickets will be available there. So that way all the historical incidents that are reported against an asset will be stored and can be referred back. If there is frequent issues against a server or against a printer, information and incident count will help you to take a decision of upgrading or replacing an asset. All right. In addition to that, it also stores the financial information and contract information, which we are going to discuss about in the next series. Let us see how I can quickly assign users to assets. We know that we can assign users from the Assign button. That will work for one or two assets. But if you have thousands of assets, how can you assign users to assets? That is the next challenge. To address that, you need to go to the Assets section. Here you can find unassigned workstations. In this section, there is an option to automatically assign users. When you click on that, it will show you a wizard in which once the scan is done, it will automatically fetch the last logged in user. You can find the user, choose the asset, and then click on Assign Owner. Then it will automatically assign owners in bulk to all the scanned workstations. All right. Now let us go back to the admin section. Under Asset Management, you can find Asset Additional Fields. So you've got Workstation Additional Fields as well as Asset Additional Fields. When I add it under Workstation Additional Fields, these fields will be available for all the workstations with which you can gather additional information like a location, or even information about barcodes can be stored here. So you can store text, numeric, and date and time fields. If it is added as an asset additional field, it will be available for both workstation, servers, routers, printers, etc. We discussed about the states which control the life cycle of the asset. So this is where you can configure additional asset states. If you have additional states in the life cycle of an asset, it can be added here. All right. Now, once again, let us go back to the asset. Open an asset which is discovered. So assume that this asset is out of its useful life. Now I have to completely get rid of this asset. That is the case, click on the asset state, change from in use. You can either choose to expired or disposed. So when I click on disposed and save, none of the details will be removed out of the system. Everything will be there for historical reference, but I cannot scan the asset anymore. It is no more a managed asset, and the license taken up by this asset is released for usage of the other assets. So under workstations, you can find laptop and desktop. So based on the model of the asset, we automatically identify whether it is a laptop or a desktop. MacBook, we know that it is a laptop. It is identified by the application based on something called OIDs, object IDs, which is classified under the admin section under scan settings. So ServiceDesk Plus has the built-in capability to automatically identify existing devices. So based on the object ID, it will automatically identify the device, and certain type of devices which are new in the market might not be updated in the application. That is the case, it will be identified as an unknown device, the IP address. Now you can manually choose the product and product type. From then on, if there is a similar object ID identified, the asset will be automatically classified. We keep updating the information about new assets that are available, new models that are available in the market, so you don't have to worry about this section much. These are the various different options available for discovery and classification of assets in ServiceDesk Plus. All right, the next session is on the 7th of June. In that discussion, we are going to speak about how to manage software licenses and how to configure configuration management database and consume it for ITSM. The session is on 3 timings. You've got one at 11 a.m. Singapore time, 11 a.m. GMT, and 11 a.m. PST. So if you've got any feedback or questions, please feel free to send an email to support@servicedeskplus.com. We'll answer that for you. Thank you so much for joining this class. I'll meet you in the next class and a different discussion. Thank you and have a good day.